Then go ahead, let's take a deep breath. Think of the first word you were going to say, and we are ready for you to begin.
Last April, I found myself in the middle of the jungle in about 2-hour swim into a hole in the ground. There was 2 hours of preparation before this exploration. We were exploring a cave system in Mexico that is part of the largest underwater river system in the world, on the Yucatan Peninsula. For people who know, it's like near Cancun, Tulum area. So I found myself in this hole, swimming for, at this point, 2 hours in pitch black. We had lights, but it's the darkest place on Earth. It's a cave, there's no sunlight. So these caves vary in width and size, and at points you find yourself in very tight spaces. The moment I'm explaining to you now, I found myself with my stomach pressed against the ground, my back against the ceiling, and my air tank being pushed ahead in the hole in front of me. They live on my side, and for this purpose, I couldn't fit with it on my side, so I had to push it in front of me. These caves are limestone, so our bubbles hit the ceiling, and little chunks of rock fall down. Visibility is very limited as you swim through these tight passages. And I found myself wondering, how did I get here? So let's backtrack. 12 years. 12 years ago, I found myself in my friend's backyard. His father brought out some scuba equipment.
Let me stop you real quick. Is this still your attention getter?
No.
Is this your first main point?
It's going to lead into a roadmap to my first main point.
So we're getting to that thesis.
Yeah.
Copy that. You haven't given your thesis yet.
No.
Okay, good. Keep going.
So I found myself in my friend's dad's backyard, where I took my first breath underwater from a scuba regulator. This is when I realized that I have this passion for water. I could breathe underwater now, and I never wanted to stop. So in order for you to get to know me better, I want to share with you my passion for the ocean through my first experiences in the ocean, then my career in diving, and eventually the extreme places that my diving takes me. My name is Keon. I am 20 years old. I started diving when I was 8 in my friend's backyard, and now I have a job as a scuba instructor, and I've explored some deep, dark corners of our oceans. So I just told you a little bit about where I ended up in my diving, but we're going to backtrack, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my beginnings in diving. So I took my first breath off of a scuba regulator in my pool.
Let's go back real quick. So you're saying let's take it back. So this first main point is going to be?
Early beginnings.
Early beginnings. So everybody, let's use the signpost. I'd like to start off
with my early beginnings in diving.
So that we can
find out about where I ended up in diving.
And all of this is for us to
get to know me.
Oh, yes! Fantastic. Okay. Make that transition one more time for me. Here we go.
So.
And without the word so, simply to
get to know me better. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I started out in diving. Then I'm going to tell you about my career in diving, and ultimately where I ended up.
Yes, your thesis. Good times. Now go into that first transition. So first
I'm going to tell you about my early beginnings in diving, in order for you to get to know me better.
Yeah.
In order for you to get to know me better,
I'm
going to tell you about my beginnings in diving.
Awesome.
So I was in my friend's backyard. His dad brought out some scuba gear, something I'd never even thought of before. I put that regulator in my mouth, the mouthpiece, and I took my first breath in the water, and I could think of nothing else that I'd want to do with any and all of my spare time. So I went home that day, and I told my dad, Dad, I want to become a certified diver. And he said no. He said, it's too expensive, and you're 12. I begged. I said, please, Dad, please. He said, the only way you can do it is if you pay for it yourself. And I was a child. I had no income. Pretty much every dollar my parents gave me from that point on went handed right back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I became a certified diver. And then I found myself being this little young kid with this certification card that lets you go and dive, but nobody to go with. So it sat stagnant, and the path to diving is expensive. I couldn't afford it. So I told you a little bit about how I was introduced to diving. Now, in order to help you get to know me even better, I'm going to tell you about my career in diving. My high school job, was working in a dive shop. This enabled me to now have a cost-effective way to keep diving, to keep learning, and to keep my education going. 2 years later, I found myself on the path to about to become a scuba instructor. I was going to be responsible for people, their safety, their lives, their education, and making sure that they were in a position to go and dive on their own, the same way my instructor taught me. It was a lot of pressure for an 18-year-old, and I was very nervous. But ultimately, I came out of it a certified scuba instructor, and to this date, I've certified over 100 students.
Oh, wow.
Over time, with all these students, you begin to feel burned out. You do the same dives, you dive in the same places, to the same depths and limits, and you see the same general thing. You see fish, here you see kelp, you see rocky reef, a bunch of different stuff. But it gets boring after a while. I have over 900 dives in California. I spent a lot of time underwater, and I've seen a lot of what our state has to offer underwater. I wanted to push my diving to a new place. So, after I was an instructor for 2 years, I found myself itching for more. This brings me to where I am now. In order for you to get to know me best, you have to know how I ended up in that deep, dark cave. I pushed my diving to a new limit. I started what's called technical diving. Technical diving is when you take a bunch of gear that you really don't need and you go down to extreme depths. The recreational dive limit, if you were to go and get certified today, would be 130 feet. We push to 300 feet. I've done 4-hour cave explorations now. All of this new training, new experiences revitalized my love for the ocean and brought me deeper into it, no pun intended. This brings me to now I'm in a cave with my stomach pressed against the ground and my back against the ceiling. When I cleared through that restriction, it opened into a room bigger than this one, with stalactites and stalagmites from floor to ceiling. The watercolor changed instantly from gray in front of my face. It became, as far as I could see, crystal clear in this beautiful room. And I had a camera with me. I documented it, and I brought it back, and I share it with my friends and family. This is where I've decided I want my life to go. I want to go underwater, capture what's there, and bring it back to you. So, in conclusion, in order for you to get to know me better, I told you a little bit about my early beginnings in diving, then my career as a diver, and ultimately where I'm at now, stuck in a deep, dark hole in the ground, wondering why I'm here. The reason I'm there is to get to that room. 2 hours of swimming. I even had to eat underwater. 2 hours of swimming to get into a big, pretty room with a lot of rocks. To many people, boring. But for me, a hole that nobody hasn't seen light for 10,000 years, it warms my heart. It tells you a little bit about who I am and my passions. And that's me.